Hello, and welcome to the Missionary Podcast. I'm your host, Elder Swagibrad, and I unfortunately seem to be caught up in a bunch of vines at the moment. And regrettably, all of my podcasting equipment is also tied up in an obscene number of vines at the moment, meaning that there's only one place where I can record today's episode of the Missionary Podcast, the only podcast dedicated to bringing you weekly missionary news. Well, it has been a week full of big news for the city of Missionary, where I, faithfully, am the only source of weekly news in a podcast format. But perhaps the biggest news of all this past week comes from Pablo, well known as the most reputable business dealer of our age, and famously from the city of Missionary himself. Pablo recently got into a bit of a scandal over the one-note digital orchestra that he launched himself on his website, which endeavored to have people from all over the world send in their own individual notes that would later be digitally edited together into a massive orchestra of unparalleled size and scope. However, the wrinkle came as this one-note digital orchestra somehow transformed into the launch of Publication Services, Pablo's new musical production company, which admittedly has caused the rise of the new rap star of our city, Goblin Gary, beloved by absolutely everybody. Without Pablo launching his Publication Services, we here at the Missionary Podcast never would have come across Goblin Gary and his delightful music. And ever since I've started listening, I just can't stop listening to Goblin Gary's music. It is perhaps the most transformational art to grace our city and perhaps even to grace the world. It's very rare that you have the opportunity to recognize that you're at the crossroads of history. And this is one of those moments where we can recognize that the world will never be the same because an artist named Goblin Gary stepped up and made music to change our lives forever. And it is with great joy that we at the Missionary Podcast are able to announce that we have been able to license Goblin Gary's first song, Rockstick and Fairy, and are able to play that for you right now. Ladies and gentlemen, may I present to you the one, the only, the magnificent Goblin Gary.
My name Goblin Gary. I here to say many good thing to you today. I tell you about rock Goblin Gary call home. It a very good rock family store from a gnome. It not very big, but it not too small. Goblin Gary love it. Every room and hall. I tell you about stick Goblin Gary like to hold. It very cool stick till it covered in mold. It not fun now, but felt very cool then. Goblin Gary really hope we see a stick like that again. Goblin Gary like human who let Goblin Gary speak in the big noise he make every week. As far as the money you ask if Goblin Gary sent, Goblin Gary no like the implication of that statement. Goblin Gary no like fairies, they big dumb. Goblin Gary think their fingers look like little tiny thumbs. Take that, fairies. Goblin Gary got you. Get wrecked, lol.
Thank you, Goblin Gary. That was positively delightful. And I can say that that's entirely changed my outlook on the world in a way that I never could have anticipated would happen. But now that I've listened to that song, it's undeniable. But the question still remains, is it right for Pablo to keep all of the profits from these life-changing experiences he's provided for himself? After all, when he told us about the one-note digital orchestra that he was planning, he made no mention that all of this was going to be published to the world in a different format than a massive orchestra with each individual person contributing a single note. It just seems like something is going on here underneath the surface, and it's going to take some investigative journalism from yours truly, Elder Swagibrad, to get to the bottom of this and figure out what's actually going on. Hopefully, we'll have more details to share in the coming weeks. Today's episode of the Missionary Podcast has been sponsored by Pablo. Pablo is the purveyor of many online goods and has services for virtually everything that you might need. Are you interested in learning underwater basket weaving? Not only are there courses for that provided on Pablo's website, but you can also buy baskets, water, and weaving materials. Are you interested in finding a new vacation area you've never been to before? You're in luck. Pablo has launched a new service that we have the pleasure of announcing, where they create new vacation locations that have never existed before, that you can be the first person to visit on your vacation. Are you tired of all your coworkers showing you all the cool places they've been that you haven't, and you wish you had cool places to show them? Well, with Pablo's new service, you will be able to show them a place that you know your coworker Carl has not been to before. We get it, Carl. You get a lot of vacation time because you've been with the company a long time, but there's no need to brag about it. Today's quote is, "Spicy soap. I just put spicy soap on my hands." Today's episode of the Missionary Podcast was written by Barney, the Black Pen. Thank you, Barney, for writing the script for today's episode. Everybody has both a best buy date and an expiration date.